Hey everyone, Michael here with another video. So today we're going to be going through kind of an overview video. So this is the first video on this playlist, and this will go through all of our steps for both our clinical appointments, but then also kind of what happens between it for our digital dentures that we're making here at UMKC. So this playlist contains more in-depth videos on each one of these steps that are very informative. They kind of take you through these processes so you can have a better understanding of them. But the purpose of this one is just to give an overview of kind of all of this and what it will look like for you when you do a digital denture. So let's just take a bird's eye view of what each of these clinical appointments will look like. So our first appointment, if you even want to count it as the first appointment, is just going to be the preliminary impressions. So immediately this is where it is going to shift a little bit and be a little bit different from our traditional workflows. So you're going to be fabricating a custom tray off of the preliminary impression, just like you would for a conventional denture. But instead of putting a little handle on the anterior portion of it to be able to take it in and out of the mouth, you're actually going to fabricate your occlusal rim, your wax rim, directly on that custom tray. And I'll show you that here in a little bit. So then you'll go into your next appointment, which will be secondary impressions and jaw relations. So what you'll do is you'll take that custom tray with the wax rim on it, and you can use that wax rim as a handle of sorts for the border molding. You'll border mold with heavy body, and then take your final impression for both the maxillary and the mandibular denture. And then what you'll do is you'll do your maxillomandibular relations as well. Ideally, this would be done in one appointment, but I do understand that is a lot to get done in one appointment, so sometimes you can split this up into two if you need to. And so you'll do your max-man relations, and then you'll take your occlusal registration in CR, obviously. And then from there, what we'll do is we'll come up here to our scanner, and we'll scan these in with our desktop scanner, send those files off to the lab, where they will then design a denture for us, which will then approve that design, get it back, 3D print it in our 3D printing room upstairs, and that what you'll get back is a try-in denture. Now it's just a monolithic white material, and the purpose of this is then to bring the patient back for that third appointment, where it'll be your clinical trial appointment, where you'll try in that try-in denture and make any changes you would like to make. One of the great things with these try-in dentures is that you can adjust them chair side if there are certain things that you would like to change. But if there's any sort of tooth positioning or anything like that, we're always going to be sending a lab script to the lab along with, if we have to rescan that try-in, with whatever changes we would like to make. Now, sometimes we'll do multiple try-in appointments. I'd say generally about half the time we'll do multiple, if not more. And we'll just repeat that process for as many times as it takes until we get something that is either perfect or close enough with very minor alterations that we are confident to go ahead and send those to the lab, and we'll get back a file that then we will take upstairs again to our 3D printing room, and we're going to mill our final denture on our PM7. And then you'll take that final denture, and then you'll try that in for the patient and deliver that in that fourth appointment. So in an ideal world, this is really taken 4 appointments to deliver the prosthesis. I guess it's 4 if you count preliminary impressions as well. But that's kind of the overview of this process. And so let's go ahead and kind of dive a little bit deeper into each of these clinical appointments so we can kind of have a better understanding of what they entail. So that first clinical appointment, this is an example of a wax rim that's fabricated on top of the custom tray. I know it feels weird to do. Just don't overthink this part. The purpose of this is, like I said, we're going to be, well, let's back up a little bit. With a digital denture, we don't have a need for a master cast. We don't have a need for a record base because we're not actually going to be setting teeth on this record base. We're going to be doing it digitally. And so actually we will be losing accuracy if we go through the process of fabricating a master cast and then doing a record base and scanning that in. Now it is very minor, and if you do a great job, there shouldn't be too much distortion. And there are some situations where we would need to do that for a digital workflow, like if there's a very collapsed VDO, which I'll get into here in a little bit. But what The purpose of this is that we want this to be as accurate as possible. So we'll be scanning in that final impression here in a second, and we're going to be fabricating it off of that instead. So custom tray that's well fitting. Obviously the extensions are going to be like we see here in this video, or this photo up here, and with that wax rim on top of that. So we're going to then take that into our second clinical appointment, where we will border mold with heavy body, and then take our final impression, and then also do our max man relations with that off of that final impression. Now, one of the things that you're probably thinking is, at this point is, it's going to be a really large prosthesis or wax rim, basically, because instead of having it off of a record base, which is not very thick, you're going to have the layer of the custom tray, the layer of the border molding material, the final impression material. So that is, it has some heft to it when you actually create it. But again, we go back to, we don't have a need for a master cast in this case. We don't have a need for a record base in this case. So for the majority of these appointments, this is what we're going to be doing, of just fabricating it off of that final impression. So you border molded, you took your final impressions, and then you do your max man relationships just like you would with a conventional workflow. What I really need to stress with this is, obviously everything you turn into us needs to be cleaned up. This goes through the same QAing process that our conventional dentures do for the wax rims. But the important thing, and I can't stress this enough because I get this back a lot, where this is missing, is you need to take a bite registration or an occlusal registration in this case. You need to take it with Regisil, and you need to have it clearly trimmed, just like you can see in this photo. This is pretty textbook for what we're looking at for this. It needs to be trimmed. If you just give us a wax rim that does not have the Regisil occlusal registration in there, you're going to have to bring the patient back and do it again. So again, I can't stress that enough, especially for all of these steps. You need to make sure that you've taken that occlusal registration. On your wax rim, just like you would for a conventional denture, you need to mark the midline, the incisal plane, and then obviously the CR record at OVD, and then also your tooth molds and shade. The shade is going to be for the final prosthesis because we just 3D print these try-ins in only one shade. But you do need to explain to the lab of what shape of teeth do you want, like all of that. You need to tell them the mold and everything, because they're going to then take this. Well, first off, we're going to scan this in. And so this is going to be a step that you as the student are required to attend. There's some videos in this playlist entitled Scanning in a Wax Rim and also Common Scanning Mistakes. You need to watch these videos before you come in here with us and we go through scanning it. They're about 20 to 40 minutes a piece. They try to be very informative with them, and I promise they are filled with a lot of really good information that you do need to know, and you do need to review before you come in to actually scan with us. So we're going to scan this in with our desktop scanner right here, and then we're going to be sending out that scan to the lab along with our lab script with all the information that we need for it, and they're going to take that scanned in wax rim and fabricate and design a denture off of that. So then once we get that back, we'll approve that design, and then after that we are going to go back upstairs to our 3D printing lab, and we're going to print this try-in denture. So like I said, this is a monolithic material that we're making this out of. It's just going to be white. It's not going to be gingiva or anything like that. And the purpose of this is so that we can get an idea of what the setup will look like in the patient's mouth. So you're going through and you're checking everything just like you would for a posterior try-in or an anterior try-in. You're checking the occlusion, you're checking the shape of the teeth, you're checking the occlusal plane, you're checking to see, lip support, everything that you all know that you're doing in the appointment, you'll be doing with this. Now, one of the things that is an important distinction between a digitally fabricated denture and a conventional denture is you do lose a little bit of your flexibility when you're doing it digitally, because in a conventional denture, for your posterior try-in, say, you're able to adjust the occlusion chair side. You can move teeth, as we all do for all of our appointments. You're moving teeth, you're adjusting the angulation, you're adjusting the occlusion, etc. But for this, you're not able, this is just one try-in. You're not able to just move the teeth chair side. Now, what this means is a few things. First off, you need to work with your faculty to write an incredibly detailed and specific lab script that you will then send to the lab with whatever changes you need to make. And this is a really, really good experience for you in the long term, because this is going to simulate how you communicate with labs in your private practice. That these lab technicians, they're phenomenal. They're really skilled at what they do, but they haven't seen the patient like you have. They don't know the things that you know. So sometimes even including some intraoral photos to illustrate what you're showing can be very helpful. And another important thing for this is when you give us back the try-in, if we need to rescan it, the thought process for that is going to be if there's significant changes that you made either to the intaglio, to the extension to the vestibule, or for the example that I gave for our video is I adjusted the occlusal plane. And you can adjust that chair side. You just take Ben Air with some pineapple burrs and you can adjust your occlusal plane, you can adjust the intaglio, and then if the changes are significant enough and your faculty think it's necessary, we'll go ahead and scan that in and attach those scans alongside the lab note to the lab. So really the big thing for this is you've got to be able to communicate the changes that you want to make to the lab. And what I always tell people with these digital dentures is your success with these digital dentures is going to depend on how well you're able to communicate with the lab. And I think that's very applicable for private practice as well. You can't just send them something, you can't just send them a scan of a wax rim and expect to get back a perfect final denture. You're going to need to communicate, you're going to need to explain what changes you make. Otherwise, this will be a frustrating process, I won't lie. But if you're able to communicate and write a good lab script and clearly communicate the changes, then the lab is really good about making these changes. So the other part for this too is that sometimes there are going to be multiple try-in appointments. I would say over half the time we're doing probably 2 try-ins. And so what that means is that we're just kind of repeating this process over and over. So we're just going to be, so let's just say, you finish your wax rims, we get back the try-in, we print the try-in, you try it in the patient's mouth. Let's just say you make significant occlusal changes to the occlusal plane, and you want to scan those in. So you'll take a bite registration. Again, for all of these, anything you're giving back to us to scan, we need to have the occlusal registration there as well. And so then you're going to be also then writing a lab script with exactly those changes that you would like to make. And then we'll get back a new setup, which we'll then 3D print again and try that in. And then we'll make changes off of that as needed. And once we get to the point where we feel like what we are seeing in the mouth is very close to what we want the final one to look like, it doesn't have to be perfect. There can still be minor occlusal changes or angulation changes of the teeth. Once we get that back, then we can order our final prosthesis. And so with our final milling process, there will be a video here on this playlist that goes through how we go about milling these in-house in our 3D lab upstairs. So we have a PM7 from Ivoclar, which is a top-of-the-line milling unit. This thing is absolutely amazing. And what we'll do then is we'll be able to mill it. The majority of the time we'll be milling it out of a monolithic block, which you can see here, where it's one block that has a side for the gingiva, has a side for the tooth shade, and then it mills it all in one piece. And it's a really, really impressive way that they're able to do that. I won't go into the details for that because it'll probably bore you, but just trust me, it's fascinating. And then for the actual milling process itself, again, you need to watch the video that I'll have on here of the milling process that goes through it step by step before you come up to mill it with anyone in the lab. So then what you'll get back from this is you'll get back your final denture, which you'll then deliver for the patient. Again, you're delivering this in the same way you would a conventional denture. You're going to be trying it in, making whatever adjustments. You're going to do your 24 and 72-hour recalls. One of the things anecdotally that I have seen is generally these don't require as much adjustment as conventional dentures do. A big reason for that is because within the processing phase of a conventional denture, there is always a level of distortion that is present. But like I've said a few times by now, we're fabricating effectively our final denture off of our final impression. So there's fewer steps and fewer things that could go wrong, and smaller amounts of distortion. And so generally on the intaglio, I mean, these fit like a glove. It really is impressive. And also the occlusion that the labs are able to generate with these is really impressive too. I mean, I've been blown away by all the ones that I've been able to do and deliver, that the way that they occlude is just beautiful. It really is impressive. And so that just about does it for all of our clinical appointments. Now, one of the things I want to stress is that I've said it multiple times by now, but for each of these steps where you'll be involved with it, which will be scanning in the wax rims, scanning in the try-in if that's needed, if we make significant changes, being there for 3D printing the try-in dentures, and being there for milling the final denture, there are videos on this playlist that cover all of this explicitly. So what you need to do is, like we said, there's a trade here that you don't have to set teeth, but you do have to watch these videos before you come up to do it with either faculty or TAs or staff. And it's really important that you do that. And we will be testing your knowledge just to make sure that you have watched it. But the purpose of this is just to explain the process of a digital denture to you, because realistically, when you get out into private practice, for most of us that are going to be doing dentures, you might not want to do it a traditional way. You might, but you might want to do it in a more digital workflow. And the purpose of this is so that you're going to be able to be familiar with this workflow, so that when you get out into practice, you know what to expect, you know what you're doing, and then you also are able to see the two ways to do it. That you're going to graduate, you're going to do both a conventional denture, you're going to do a digital denture, and what this will allow you to do is kind of understand of what it is that you'd prefer, and you can kind of come to those decisions on your own. So overall, too, one of the things I do want to mention is this digital denture worksheet. This is always, a constantly evolving worksheet, but it is important that at the beginning of this process, when you take your records up to the lab to get QA'd, that you have this worksheet filled out completely, and you can fill it out with your faculty that you work with in the teams. It needs to have a paid stamp, and you also need to have a lab script along with this that just says, please refer to the digital denture worksheet, so that we're able to kind of track this process as well. So that just about does it for everything that we're going to be going through with these digital dentures. Like I said, this is just really an overview video, and I go into each one of these steps very in depth. And if you're going to be doing a digital denture, watch these videos before you come ask us questions about it, just so that we're all going to be on the same page and that you'll have an idea of kind of what's coming. And the purpose of this is that, hey, you just feel prepared for every appointment. That I know the digital dentures can sound scary. It sounds like it could be overwhelming, or it sounds like it's going to be different than what you're used to. And while it is different, I want you to feel empowered to be able to understand this process all the way through, so that this is going to be both as educational for you as possible, but also that the end result that you're going to be delivering to your patient is going to be as high quality as it possibly can be. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions about this process, please feel free to reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to cover that or make additional videos going through that. And have a great rest of your night.